everybody. Welcome to the very first Baseball Now of the season, brought to you by East Tennessee Media and our brand new network, Southeastern Sports Network. We've got a jam-packed show for you for the first show of the season. So now we're going to turn it on down and head on down to our Southeastern Sports Studios in Atlanta for Thomas, who is going to give us a look at the history of the league. Thomas?
Hey, hey, everybody. Hope everybody's doing wonderful tonight. So let's go ahead and take a look at the former league champions. 2018 is when we first started. The winner was Kenny Wilburn. 2019 was just truly Thomas. 2020 was a split COVID year, so we had a split title that year between Junior and Tammy, co-champions. 2021, Dan won his first title. In 2022, myself again, two-time champion. In 23, Dan joined the ranks as a two-time champion. And then 2024, we had a newcomer to the group, and Greg Lindsay taking home the trophy and the championship. So a couple of things that I pointed out in the last show, and I'll point them out again for everybody. We have never had a back-to-back champion, one. Two, this is an opportunity for either myself, Thomas, or Dan to become the first three-time winner of this league. And it's another opportunity. Can Greg join Thomas and Dan as two-time winners, or do we have a newcomer this year that joins the program? So we'll have to, stick around, as they say, and we'll find out.
Thank you, Thomas. As always, a very interesting look at the history of the past. I still cannot believe after all these years that the Cubs are not in that list, but hopefully we'll get there this year. All right, folks, we're going to take a look at the 2024 season last year. We're going to do a little bit of a rewind and look back. Of course, we all know that the Demon Ducks won the championship last year with a 13-9 record, followed by Dan with Wolf at 14-7. You had Tammy with the Wildcats at 12-9-1, and Dan had a tie too. You had Thomas with the Georgia Dominators at 14-8. You had the Gatlinburg Cubs at 7-15. The Georgia Warner Robin Bombers, 8-14. That's Jackson's team. You had the Atlanta Express, that's Ribbon's team, at 12-10. And you had Ken's Making Chili Dogs at 7-15. That was last year's thing. Of course, let's remember the Ducks, Dan, Wildcats, and Dominators were in the playoffs last year. And we all remember how that turned out, where Greg did end up taking down Dan. That's a little side note adding on to the recap from last year. Thomas and Dan with the Georgia Dominators and Wolf both were tied for the most wins in the league at 14 apiece, which was interesting because the Demon Ducks, who are our league champions, only had 13 wins last year. Our longest winning streak last year goes to Wolf at 6 games, and the longest losing streak was the Gatlinburg Cubs at 10. Just a little extra side note, a little negative information. Even though the Demon Ducks were the champions last year and fought hard all season and got where they were, and they were managed pretty good, let's not forget the biggest stat from 2024, the biggest blowout of 2024 was the Georgia Dominators at 652 against the Demon Ducks at 342. So that's your recap of the 2024 season. So now I'm going to send it back on to Thomas for the draft. Thomas?
All right, let's go ahead and talk about this draft. Folks, go ahead and give you some nuggets about the draft. The draft is on March 7th at 7 p.m. It is a Saturday night primetime draft special. Can't beat primetime stuff. It's a snake draft, which is picks 1 through 8, and then it'll go 8 to 1. Very interesting. and it's a 60 seconds per pick. So let's go ahead and talk about that draft order. You have Ruben in the Atlanta Express drafting number 1. Drafting number 2, you have Ken and the Chili Dogs. At number 3, you have Scotty and the Gatlinburg Cubs. And at number 4, you have the defending 2024 champion, Greg and the Demon Duck Lindsay's. And now we'll go ahead and send it back to Scotty. He's going to go through the last 4 spots of the draft.
Thank you, Thomas. In the number 5 spot in the draft, we have got Tammy with the Wildcats. Coming in at number 6 on the draft, we've got the Georgia Dominators, managed by Thomas. Coming in at number 7, we've got the Warner Robin Bombers by Jackson. And at the very bottom, number 8, we have got our runner-up, Dan, with Team Wolf, in the number 8 spot in the draft. So, folks, that's going to be your draft order this year from the 1st to the 8th spot. Like Thomas said, it will be a snake draft this year. So I'm going to take this time to throw it back to Thomas. What do we have coming up next, Thomas?
All right, folks. Next on the program, we're going to have what we call a player Q&A session. Myself and Scotty are going to interview 2 players, and hopefully 2 players apiece. We're still waiting on the other one to join us. It's a short 4 minutes a person, and it's 2 questions that myself and Scotty have thought of to ask each opponent, player of the league. And we're going to go ahead and get started. The defending champion, Greg Lindsay, is going to be up first. So we're going to go ahead and rock and roll with Greg. You there, Greg?
Yep. Good evening, guys.
All right, Greg. So on your 4 minutes, Scotty is going to be the one to do the interview.
All righty.
Greg, how you doing this evening?
Good. How you doing, Scotty?
I'm doing really good. First off, I want to take this time to welcome you to the Southeastern Sports Network as an analyst this year, and welcome aboard to being a full analyst this year. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
We are too. I'm excited to work with you some. So, Greg, here's my first question for you tonight. Based off of an interview you had earlier this year, do you still have your same opinion on the most overrated teams in the league? And now that you've had time since that interview to think, have you changed that opinion any? Or are you still thinking those 2 teams are overrated? Or are you starting to think it might be a more even playing field?
Not really. I hadn't really put too much thought into that, but I did put a lot of thought into something coming up a little while, but I don't think I'm going to change my too much opinion about that right this second. I don't think they're too overrated. I forgot who I said. I think it was the Express was one of them, I believe.
And the Wildcats were the second one.
Was that who it was? Wait. I don't think they're too overrated. The hype on them other teams, there's some high hype out here.
And for my second question, what's your opinion on who do you think that was not in the playoffs last year? Do you see any teams from last season that didn't make the playoffs, whether it be on the cusp of it or completely out of it? Do you see any teams making it this year that might surprise you?
Well, it's not going to be a surprise, I hope, but I do have 2 new teams that I believe in the playoffs this year. And some people I don't think will make it.
Who's your 2 teams you think that'll be in the playoffs this year that was not last year?
Well, I'm going to say the Express and the Cats are going to be in the playoffs this year.
Well, the Cats were already in it last year. So.
Well, yeah, that's right. They were in it, but that's right. But I'm going to go with Express. And probably if I had to pick another one, because I didn't think the Cats made it last year, but the other one would probably be Ken on past years playing experience.
I could see that, and I can go with that because I mean,
I'm hoping the Cubs get in it this year.
Well, let's hope so. The Cubs are overdue for it. We've had one or two seasons where we've been five. I won't say 500, but we've been kind of right there even. And then we've had one or two where we've been way down. So hopefully, my team started off last year with only one win and got 10 straight losses. And then all of a sudden it turned around and got 7-15. So, I mean, that's still not good, but still that's 7 more wins than I had the previous year. But I could see that your two teams, because I feel the Express is possible, and I think Ken is possible too. But Greg, thank you for answering those questions for me, Thomas.
No problem.
All right.
Who do you got next, Thomas?
All right, we there? I'm gonna throw a curveball into it. I'm gonna go with one of my other ones, my other opponent. Hopefully he'll show up. The other one will show up here in a minute, hopefully. So this time we're gonna get Ruben with the Atlanta Express. Hey, you there, Ruben?
How are y'all doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Welcome to the show, Ruben.
All right, Ruben. I got 2 questions for you, and we got 4 minutes. So let's go ahead and roll with it. All right, my first question. I thought about this yesterday, and this is a piggyback off of what was earlier said. I think it was 2 weeks ago in the bullpen show 2 weeks ago. That you can catch on Southeastern Sports Network. So, most overrated team. It's a 2-part question. Who do you think is your most overrated team? And who is the team this year that you most are aiming to destroy? Not destroy and dominate.
Well, I don't really think there's any overrated team. I think that emotions get the best of people sometimes, and they say things that they shouldn't. But no, I don't think there's any overrated team. As far as opponents go, my hope is to crush. I'm going to try to break his spirit this year, and that would be the Ducks. And that's our hope, is just that I'm gonna break his spirit.
Well, we'll have to see. He's a really tough opponent to beat. So with that being said, I'll go on to the second question that I've got for you. So since you started in 2021, would you say that it is tougher to win a championship right now in 2025 than it was when you first started in 21?
Of course it is, because the league is more competitive. People are drafting. When you auto draft, it takes some of the competition out of it, because the computer automatically drafts for you. But we have more active, since when we first started, we have more players, so we have more active drafting. And yeah, that makes the competition a lot harder, because you have to, every draft pick is important, because you have some people, you have people that come behind you that are actually picking. So, they're hand picking their team. So competition is it is a lot different. And it is a little bit harder to win a championship and to get there. I mean, you yourself, you take nothing away from you. You've won 2 in the past, and Dan's won 2. But I mean, you can ask yourself that question. Getting back there to win 3 is that's not a cakewalk to get there at all.
Oh no, I can go ahead and tell you, no, it's not. It is very tough to win a championship now. There's just so many better players. I mean, you, Tammy and the Wildcats, Greg, there's just so many better players. And whenever the Cubs, Scotty, whenever his managing catches up to the draft, whether that's this year or I've always said that I think that as a sleeper team, that when they put the whole package together, that could be a team that not runs away, but a team that makes a big move up the standings.
A
Well,
lot of it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
now go ahead, finish up what you was gonna say.
A lot of it comes back down to the draft, who you pick, and who you're left with, and you form your team around that, and then you just have to make strategic moves throughout the year. You have to find you a good trading partner. You have to find you a good trading buddy, and you make trades that better both teams, and advance both teams. So Scotty is a good manager, and
Right. Yeah.
in years prior, he just hasn't had, you know,
I
like
agree.
some teams have a whole lot of luck, a whole lot of luck,
Some
and very
don't.
little skill, and some teams have a lot of skill in managing and very little luck. Um, you have to have both, and
Right.
some
Yeah.
teams just have an abundance of it more than others, and
Right.
that's how
I
it
agree.
goes.
All right. Well, we're out of our allotted time here, so I
All right.
appreciate you. I appreciate your interview. Thank you. All right, Scott. That's going to pretty much wrap it up for my part. We're going to go ahead and cancel the other one. Um, you've got one more left, and Tam, my man.
Thank you, Thomas. Tammy, first off, welcome to the show this evening.
Thank you. Happy to be here. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Again, congratulations on your first, or actually, I guess it's first or second playoff berth last year.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Tammy, let's open up the question and continue on with the theme that I've seen going on in tonight's episode. Who do you think your most overrated team is in this league?
Well, I think it's going to be the Thomas's team. Okay.
The Dominators?
Yes, the Dominators. I couldn't think because they don't dominate. But anyway, because they seem to bring a lot to the table, but then I've beat them several times. So I know that a lot of theirs is a lot of wind, but I do believe that they're a good team. But I think this year, as usual, the Cats are going to shut them down again.
Right. And I think you might be onto something there a little bit. I do know he is one of the tougher managers. So that brings me into my second question for the night. Do you have any teams that you think will be in the playoff this year? Last year the Express was on the cusp of making the playoff, but missed it by a game. Do you see any teams that might surprise you that you think will be back in there this year?
Well, hopefully the Cubs will make a strong comeback this year and make it to the playoffs, and possibly Rubens Express will make it to the playoffs. I feel confident my team will make it, but those are two that I'd like to see in this year.
I could vouch for that because I could vouch for it because I do think the Cubs will make a strong redemption this year. But Tammy, thank you for being a part of the show this evening, and thank you for answering the questions that everybody wants to know.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too. Thomas, back to you, buddy.
All right, folks, let's go on to the next part of our program. This year we're bringing on the playoff 4 and championship prediction from the analysts. We have myself, Thomas. We have Scotty, the host of Baseball Now, and the president of Southeastern Sports Network and East Tennessee Media. And we also have Greg Lindsay, a new analyst who did a wonderful job last year, and he will be going to make his predictions here in just a second. Now, folks, what's going to go on is Scotty, I think you're going first. What's going to happen is Scotty's going to give his 4 playoff teams kind of a bracket and then a champion. And then I'll go, Greg will go, and then I'll go from there.
All right. Thank you, Thomas. My playoff prediction for this year.
Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second. Having a little bit of technical difficulty. Are you there, Greg?
I think he is still muted, Thomas.
I've tried to unmute him.
Hello.
Hey, okay, Greg. Did you hear what I just said?
About what?
What the program is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. You're going to go first. So go ahead and let's roll with it. Who's your playoff 4 and the bracket and the championship round and the champion? Who you got?
All right. My playoff 4 starting out. Woo. Dan. I'm going to have the Demon Ducks in there as well. The Wildcats will be in there, and Atlanta Express. My championship round is Atlanta Express Ducks, and of course, the Ducks are going to become the first back-to-back champion.
That's yours. That's an interesting. That's an interesting prediction. All right, Scotty, what do you got?
I got my 4 teams I got facing each other is I've got the Wildcats versus Wolf, and I've got the Express versus the Cubs. And then in the championship round, I've got the Cubs versus the Wildcats, and I believe the Wildcats are going to come out this year and do it.
That's an interesting take. That's really interesting. Folks, here's my prediction. It's not really a whole lot of changes, as the 2 before me have made some radical changes to the playoff field. In no particular order, I've got Dan and Wolf. I've got myself, Thomas, and the Georgia Dominators. I've got Greg with the Demon Duck Lindsays. And I've got Ruben with the Atlanta Express in the playoff. In the championship round, I've got the Express versus Dan Wolf. And I've got another first-timer winning his first championship. I've got Ruben with the Atlanta Express taking home the championship.
If I could just interject something in there, Thomas, you see, let me explain something. The one team that I did not include this year, the Ducks, I do know in the past we have had it where the champion has tapered off a little in years past. I do think we're going to see that again this year. I don't expect a big step back from the Ducks, but I do expect a little bit of a regression versus the Ducks.
Are you asking for my opinion on that?
I do, because, I mean, like I said earlier in the program, when you get, you won the champion, but you didn't cross that 14 wins, and you also are on the losing end of the blowout, of the biggest blowout. He managed his team good and got him in the playoffs, and he got to the championship. But I think this year he's going to come back a little.
Are you asking my opinion, or are you asking Greg's opinion? Because I've got an opinion on that too.
Go for it.
I don't agree I don't see why Greg would take a step back necessarily, unless Greg just runs into some bad luck and he's got a lot of injuries. That's probably the only thing that will keep Greg out of the playoff hunt is if he gets. I mean, I do think Greg is one of the best managers, but but I don't think Greg is not taking nothing away from you, Greg. I'm not sure that if you get a rash of injuries to your star players, I'm not sure that you can overcome that. I mean, and that's not taking nothing away from you. And it is, for me and Dan, it is very difficult to overcome that. I mean, I obviously the last couple of years I didn't overcome it because I didn't win the title, but I just don't. I don't see the setback unless there's just a ton of injuries. If that happens, then yeah, he could step back. But I just don't. Scotty, I don't see it. He is, and I don't understand why people think that his team is overrated or overhyped. He's had one bad year. In the last couple of years, though, his team has been, they win 12 or 13 games, but that, what matters at the end, that's just like the Braves a couple of years ago. They won 88 games in 21 and still won the World Series. So who talks about their 88 wins? It's all about the trophy.
Yep.
I agree with that.
I mean, that's why I don't necessarily agree with Greg taking a step back.
I agree with that, Thomas.
Who's got that music playing?
What music?
Somebody's got something going on in the background. Greg, what's your opinion on Scotty's take?
Well, I don't agree because I mean, even with injuries, I mean, everybody's going to have injuries. I mean, the point is, I mean, it's not always superstars, super pitchers. You got to be able to manage and pick up the right pieces at the right time, and get the hot players at the right time and put them in.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, but I didn't know, nobody brought it up, but I mean, 3 people made their predictions here. Well, 4, I guess. No, 3, because Tammy didn't make her predictions really. But everybody's saying that out of all of us, the only one that included your team is you, which is kind of weird to me, kind of odd. But I think you might take a step back this year.
Well, yeah, I've noticed that people. I've noticed that people have said that, and I've used the analogy.
Include you because of that. I replaced you with the Wildcats. The only reason I replaced you with the Wildcats is because they beat you so many times.
Well, I think something too is I'm going to interject this about my team. The Cubs is probably one of the only teams in the league that cannot honestly take a step back because, I mean, look at where the Cubs have been the last couple of years that we can't really take a step back. So, I mean, for us, it's just moving forward.
And Greg, I noticed that nobody wanted to include my team back in the playoffs. The last couple of years, people had said that my team was falling down and all that kind of stuff. But what's interesting is since 21, the Dominators have won the most games out of everybody on here. So people can say what they want and can say that I'm going to be out of a playoff spot, but I started 1-3, I think the last couple of years, and I was right there in the first round. And last year, I mean, the first round, 20 points. If I had 20 more points, my friend, you wouldn't be champion. It would be between me and Dan, and I might be either myself or Dan would have been a 3-time champion if I had 20 more points. So I don't pay attention to people who want to put my team out. I don't pay no attention to that garbage. All I'm going to do is just show up, draft well, and kick a lot of butt.
Yep, that's the name of the plan.
And as far as Scotty's team goes, it's like I've said in an earlier interview. I do think once Scotty puts everything together, completely luck, drafting well, managing well, I do think that team, will be a contender. But I'm not really. I'm not ready to put them in the playoff. I think it's too competitive. There's too many there's too many great managers. You've got three. You've got two great managers, and you've got a manager on the rise. So the problem is that leaves out that fourth spot. And Scotty, quite honestly, you have Tammy, you have Ruben, you have Ken. That's three right there. So that's three right there that are really, that are really good. But folks, that'll wrap up the prediction segment. And Scotty, what else you got for us?
Well, I want to take this opportunity, Thomas, as always, as we do in these shows, to acknowledge our sponsors. Folks, we cannot do our shows without these corporate sponsors. We want to thank the Eileen Lindsay Memory Movie Museum in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, that just recently opened up. We also want to thank Tammy Cakes, and also want to thank East Tennessee Media. East Tennessee Media is part of the same family as us here on Southeastern Sports Network. We're looking forward this year to this new network, new studios, new shows, whole new thing. I also want to take this time to remind everybody, while you're enjoying our videos, hit that like and subscribe button, and head on over to our TikTok page, Southeastern Sports Network, and like and follow us on Facebook at Southeastern Sports Network. Also, be sure while you're doing that to go over and follow our sister channel, East Tennessee Media, and like them as well. We can't do this without y'all. Just a couple of things I want to bring up on here. We have a couple of important dates coming up. Thomas, would you like to chime in and tell us, our folks, about these important dates coming up?
Yeah, I don't mind. The first date that we got coming up, like we've already covered earlier, we've got the draft coming up on the 7th. We've got the draft coming up on the 7th. We've also got the pre and post draft special on the 7th. The time will be determined at a later date, so be on the lookout for that on all of our social media channels. We also have a future disc golf round coming up in a couple of weeks between myself, Greg Lindsay, and Scotty. It's going to be really interesting to see which one of the three of us comes out on top. And we also have a disc golf round that was filmed a couple of days ago between myself, Ruben, and Greg that I think everybody will really enjoy once it gets edited and put out there for show. And we also have on the 3rd, next Monday, we have Greg's draft special. And this will be really interesting to see what Greg can come up with. I'm not going to spill too much of the details, but if you're in the fantasy baseball, this will be a good show for you. So you might, you definitely want to tune in. And that show will be put out sometime on Monday.
Also, I just want to chime in on that, Thomas. The pre and post draft special on the 7th, that will be, both of them will be, I believe, is it both of them, Thomas, or is it just the post that's going to be live?
The post draft will be live.
The post draft show will be live. So be sure to tune in for that. It'll be on Southeastern Sports Network, of course, and on quite possibly might be covered on East Tennessee Media as well.
All right, Scott. Well, folks, that's all the time that we've got for now. Hopefully you enjoyed our program. And like Scott has said, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on our TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube pages. That's East Tennessee Media and Southeastern Sports Network. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.